I think I have about a dozen in here. I forgot to count. So hi friends, Caitlin here from the HomeStyle Honey. Today we are going to be talking about preserving food. One part of having a homestead and a homestead kitchen and even just rural country living is having a well-stocked pantry. If we're out of something, it's not a 5-minute drive to the grocery store. We are a 15 to 20-minute drive to a grocery store, and that's closer than a lot of people on homesteads and living in the country. So recently I just got a large order from Azure Standard. If you have not used Azure Standard before, and this is not a paid advertisement, they are a co-op. There's drops all over. Basically, a semi truck pulls up, your groceries get unloaded in large boxes, and you put them in your car. And they have really high quality food. Pretty much everything was organic. So I bought 30 pounds of celery, which was more than I realized it was. Don't recommend doing it. 10 to 15 would have been fine. So that equated to an individual bag of celery times 30. So we are going to be chopping celery and putting it in a vacuum sealer and freezing it, making celery salt, along with other things. I also got fresh organic corn from Azure Standard, so I'm going to be getting that prepped and processed so that I can can it another day, probably not today, realistically. And then I'm also going to be handling eggs. We have chickens, they are laying finally, which is awesome. And we are going to be water bath canning, so I'm going to take you through that as well. Okay, so first up, I'm processing celery. Part of the reason why I bought so much is celery is a staple item. I love using it in soups, even stews. It just goes in a whole variety of recipes. And I make stock. Homemade stock and bone broth is one of the main things I can. It saves us a ton of money. I know I'm getting a really high quality ingredient, and it's a great way to use up scraps. So when I make stock, I actually put in salt, pepper, fresh herbs, celery, carrots. I might have some other veggie scraps I'll throw in there, but this is where having all that celery comes in because I plan to make a ton of stock. I always do. And so when I am prepping my celery, I just cut it about right here. So these ends I'm saving for my stock. Same thing with like the little greens. Some of these will be using and dehydrating, and they'll probably go with the celery salt. And I cut off the other pieces, and then I just cut it into little chunks, and I throw this in the freezer. So later on when I'm ready to make stock, I have tons and tons of celery, and that way I can make a fresh batch of stock. Also, when you make stock from bones, like if you roast a whole chicken or you buy bones from a butcher, you can use those multiple times. You don't have to just use them once and throw them out. I pretty much do a minimum of 3 times to make stock. I've heard people talk about even doing it longer until the bones are practically disintegrating. And with how expensive fresh stock is, that's a really great way to stretch your dollars and get something high quality. And not only do I use it in soups and stews, I'll use it like if I'm throwing rice in the rice cooker. I'll even soak beans in it or cook legumes in it, barley in it. So it's just a really great staple to have on hand. Also in an emergency situation, you could definitely open a jar of stock and drink that. Having this makes it easy to just change out the vegetables each time I make stock, and I have tons on hand. So that's what we're gonna be focusing on right now. So celery pieces like this are about perfect. Here's a side view for soup. When I get some of the bigger pieces, as you get close to these ends, and they start looking like, actually don't have a great example. When they start looking like this, where they're thicker, I will also cut it down the middle and then slice it. There you go. Also, pro tip, you want a sharp knife. Dull knives are dangerous. And if you have a nice chef's knife like this and you keep that front tip down, and you just chop up and down, it makes it fast. So I just keep that very front part of my blade down and move the back up and down, and it makes it very, very easy. And then these are going to be put in either quart bags and just thrown in the freezer, or I will also use my vacuum sealer. Okay, so celery in the freezer bag. And then I just reuse these. Yes, they have holes in them. I'm gonna use them pretty quickly. I'm just not really concerned about the taste of freezer burn affecting my stock. I have been doing this for a while. It has not been an issue. And then when I also do things like preparing carrots for something, I'll throw carrot shavings and like carrot ends in something like this. Same thing with my onion ends. Okay, so I'm working on cooking dinner. I'm slicing an onion. So these onion ends, just like this, wrapper and all, I save them because that can all go in our stock. Okay, so I am prepping corn now. So I got a big box of corn from Azure Standard, and what I'm doing is I'm just going to shuck all my corn, and then I'm going to cut the kernels off the cob, and we are going to freeze them, or maybe we'll can them. So. Yeah, one of the reasons to do this, because yes, you can buy canned corn, you can buy frozen corn, is it's always so much better tasting when it's fresh picked from the season. So I love fresh picked corn. You can also just like make creamed corn. You know, when I was young, I didn't like creamed corn. I thought it was like kind of a gross old person thing, but trying it as an adult and having it fresh, homemade, not just from a can, there is a difference in quality, and it's actually really yummy, kind of sweet, creamy, of course. So this is a great way to ensure you have top quality. The other thing, depending on your food preferences and your food values, the majority of corn is a GMO product. It's Roundup ready. So corn can just have higher levels of pesticides. So it's not like they're just spraying it willy-nilly. It costs them money. They're not going to do that. But if that is something that you are trying to avoid, you're cautious of your gut microbiome, what you're eating, that would be a way to avoid it. And for me, I know that is important to us. We don't eat all organic for a lot of reasons, but corn is one that I do try to eat organic if I can. You know, people will tell you GMOs are safe. I'm the daughter of a conventional farmer. They have no problems using GMOs or eating GMOs. There's a camp of people who the idea is we just don't know really long term. There's not a lot of long-term studies. And so people who don't want to eat GMO corn, if it's organic, it's going to be a non-GMO, and Azure is a great way to get that because it is hard to find non-GMO corn, or it's hard to find organic corn, I should say. I would prefer to not eat GMOs as a whole. So sorry, Dad. But this is a great way to get a nice quality source organic corn. Okay, so as I am preparing my corn, what I do to easily take the kernels off the cob is I take a bundt pan. So you can see I've already got one right here full of corn. Flip it upside down, and then you're just going to put your ear of corn on the top here, and you can cut and just cut the kernels off like this. You'll see it makes the milk from the kernels will fly. It gets a little messy. But basically you just do this the whole way around, and it holds the corn cob in place really easily and makes it so easy to get those kernels off and not have the kernels go everywhere, and they just collect here in the bundt pan. And then from there you can process them either for canning or even just throwing them in your freezer. So that is all we have to do. And then you just turn your cob. And then you can also flip it upside down for the other side if that is helpful. And then I save my cobs and I give them to the chickens. Okay, so we are going to finish processing our corn. So I've cut it off the cob. I put it in Ziploc bags to bring it home. So I'm now in my own kitchen. You could just freeze your corn. Like, that's perfectly fine. I am running out of freezer space and I want shelf-stable goods. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this in jars and I'm going to what's called raw pack it. So I'm gonna put the raw kernels, they haven't been cooked at all, in a jar. I'm gonna top it off with some salt and hot water, and then we're gonna cap the lid and then we will process it. You can also hot pack it, which is where you've basically already kind of done a pre-cook. When you are canning is a very, very safe way to preserve food, but you need to follow proper guidelines and not go rogue. There are rebel canners out there and people who do things their own way, and that is how you get sick. When you follow proven recipes that are approved and safe guidelines, such as from like the Ball Company, it's perfectly safe. And you just want to have a clean environment and follow it, follow the steps. So I'm just going to start with some pint jars. So basically we're just going to fill our corn up. There's a little bit of liquid from the corn. It's just the like natural corn milk, really. And put that in there. I'm going to double check my recipe. Okay. Yeah. So this is very simple. We're just going to have it loosely in here. We're going to fill it with some water and some salt. When you can too, you also want to pay attention to what kind of salt you're using. You can buy pickling or canning salt, and it's basically it doesn't have like stabilizers in it that make it so it doesn't clump. I like to use Redmond's real salt. It looks like this. It's full of natural minerals. It's comes from Utah. It's mined there, so I've just got my salt on top of my corn, and I'm just going to top this off with hot water. Made sure and added water and left some headspace. So from here up is about 1 inch. It's very common for recipes to call for 1 inch of headspace. And then we're just going to get out our air bubbles. I like to use like a knife just to kind of help get those out. And you can even just let those sit. Okay, so now all I'm going to do is I'm going to just add my canning lid and the ring. I use typical canning lids. You can only use these once. They've got the little rubber seal. They're metal from the Ball brand. I don't use reusable canning lids. I have tried and they have a really high, really high fail rate, and I find that incredibly frustrating. I think it's over like 60%, whereas I probably have over a 90% success rate with these. So I just have it on nice, and then we're just going to tighten it fingertip tight. So like that, and then we're going to keep doing this with all of our other ones. Now we're going to can, and this has to process for 55 minutes, start to finish. It's really going to be more like 1.5 hours as pressure builds up, and then we put our pressure gauge on. process for pressure canning green beans really is the same as eggs, where I just cut my green beans, put them in a jar, added salt according to the recipe, and then I added boiling water so I could hot pack them, and then place them in the pressure canner and canned for the required amount of time. The next thing I'm going to do in my preserving kitchen is I am going to water bath canned eggs. So this isn't canning in the sense of the way you would water bath can, say like salsa or tomatoes or pickles or anything like that. It is simply storing fresh eggs in a glass jar with water, and then you need another agent in there like pickling lime. I believe you can also use like sodium chloride. We're just using this kind of pickling lime. So this is Mrs. Wage's pickling lime for extra crispness. So you can use this with pickles, but this is what is going to actually preserve the eggs. We are on well water, so we're just using our well water. If you are on city tap water, you would probably want to use a distilled water because chlorine can affect it. So we are going to put in 1 ounce of this to 1 quart of water. You can't really see it here, but I do have my scale. And so that's where I'm going to be weighing out one ounce. And I believe that's about 2 tablespoons. Okay, so I've got this in. The next thing is we're going to do is we're going to whisk it. And then we're going to put in our eggs. Okay, so we've got our water with our pickling lime. It looks like milk, it's not milk. And we're gonna put in fresh eggs. You cannot use eggs from the grocery store, or at least in the United States you can't, because in the United States, grocery store eggs are washed, and that is why they have to be refrigerated. So you don't wanna do that with those. You need to use farm fresh eggs that have the bloom intact. Farm fresh eggs with the bloom intact. There is a natural coating on that shell that keeps out bacteria, which is why you can store farm fresh eggs that haven't been washed at room temperature, and they will last for weeks. They need to be clean, not washed, not poopy, not have debris on it. So if you have a lot of poopy eggs from your chickens, you don't want to use those ones. You also probably need to add more bedding if you're getting a lot of dirty eggs. So this one is nice and clean, just naturally. I'm still just going to give it a quick wipe off. And then we just put it pointy side down in our pickling solution. Same thing, all of these are nice and clean. I think I'm gonna actually use a utensil for this. And then over time you will see the pickling lime separate, and so it'll be kind of cloudy on the bottom and like clear on the top. And you just want to store your eggs in a cool, dry place, not somewhere warm, not where it's going to have a lot of light. And they will store up to about a year. I've even seen some sources say 12 to 18 months. And this is whey that has been stored for centuries. We also don't want to overcrowd our eggs. So you don't want to do too many, and no cracked eggs. So I had an egg that got a little cracked today when I was getting eggs for my chickens. I'm not going to use that one because it can spoil your whole batch. So that should be good. We don't want to overcrowd them. And then we just put a lid on it to keep water from evaporating and keep out air. And then these can sit. And so in the winter, when our chicken production slows down, we have farm fresh eggs. You can use them just like normal. You can scramble them, fry them, use them in a recipe, just like that. And you can see here, you can see the pickling lime's already settled down. I think I have about a dozen in here. I forgot to count. So that is how you can store eggs. You can of course freeze dry them. I don't have a freeze dryer, but people do it. You also can crack the egg, scramble it, and put it in an ice cube tray and freeze it so that you have an individual egg for a recipe, or you can also use a muffin tin. And then you would just take those out and defrost them, like if you were gonna make a cake and needed eggs, or if you wanted to scramble them. They don't tend to reconstitute well if you fry or if you freeze a whole egg, but doing a scrambling it will still give you a good egg that you can use in a recipe. So that is how we are preserving some of our eggs. Another note about farm fresh eggs, when you have unwashed eggs with the bloom intact, these can sit out on the counter safely and last for about a month, and put them in your fridge and they will last up to like 3 months. You can always do a float test if you're not sure. So what the float test is you just put the egg in the water. If it sinks to the ground, it is fresh, it's good to go. If it floats, it's bad. And if it's kind of like perpendicular, you know, where it's touching the bottom, but it's not floating at the top, but it's not laying on the bottom in between, it's still good, but it's not mash fresh. So you want to use that up pretty quickly. And that is all you need to do to can some eggs. Thanks so much for joining me, friends, as we preserve our harvest and build up our food pantry here on our 120-year-old farm. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button below. Love to hear what else you're interested in seeing for content. I'll also have my links for all of my favorite canning resources and tools, including where I bought my produce with Azure and that discount code, pickling salt, canner, all those good things, even canning books. So be sure to check those out.